our event. Today, we are also joined by the Oslo Society of Exploration Geophysicists, OSEG. We are very happy, and we see them already on the screen that they have a nice room with nice food. And also, we are joined by the local chapter Czech Republic. And our event today will be with Aria Abubakar. He will present automating subsurface modeling, model building using deep learning. Yeah, that's our agenda today. So I will just give a quick introduction, and then also Wiebke will introduce the speaker, and then afterwards Aria will talk about his topic, and finally we will have a question and answers. We always do it like this, that we collect all the questions and then at the end ask them, but feel free to already ask your questions in the chat or something, right? So then we have already an overview about the questions. That's maybe nice. And then afterwards we have an open mic, so everybody can talk and we can socialize a bit, which is always really nice. So yeah, we are of course a EAGE local chapter. About the EAGE, it's a professional non-for-profit association of geoscientists and engineers with roughly 19,000 members, divided in two sections, oil and gas, and also near surface. But of course, in the energy transition and all these new times, this is of course also developing and changing. And one of the things the EAGE does is supporting our local chapter, and of course they have daily events, big conferences, and a lot of content, which is really interesting. So if you don't know it yet, check it out. Yeah, there's upcoming events that the EAG does. Just some of you, for you here, the GET 2021. Then, of course, the EAG Digital and also the seismic inversion events. Yeah, feel free to join these events. It would be nice. Then our local chapter, we have 6 board members currently. Of course, we are situated in Germany. Yeah, you can see all our faces, and we're also attending today. So feel free to socialize with us after the event. Then there's different ways to reach us, and email, LinkedIn, and we have a webpage on LinkedIn and on all kind of different media. And if you, for instance, with your phone, scan this this code here, this barcode or QR code, or you go to this short link, then you can see how you can reach us, how you can collaborate with us. You can see events of different chapters or job opportunities, this kind of stuff. Just check this out. It's really nice. Okay, so I would like to hand over to Paloma to say some words about their chapter because they're joining us today, about which we are really happy. But I'm not sure if the audio works. We can maybe try this now. Uh, Paloma, if you're there, if you can say something, otherwise I will just say something.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you very silently. I can hear you, but it's very silently.
Okay. Is it better now? I'm trying to speak a bit closer. No, nothing.
I can hear something. I think it's okay. If
Hello. Now, is it better?
it's better, it's becoming better. Yes, great.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you, Hannes, and thank you to the German EAG Local Chapter for the invitation, and thank you all for attending today. It's our pleasure to have you here, and it's very nice to finally have an in-person event, or yeah, to that after all this time we have the possibility to host in-person events again. Um, so we just wanted to introduce ourselves. This is the board of this year. Luke is the president, who unfortunately cannot be here. Myself, I'm the treasurer, and we have 3 vice presidents. Olivia, Isabella, and Benjamin will be sitting with us. And yeah, we are looking for people motivated people who want to join the board. So if you are one of those, just let us know. Yeah, we have some partners and sponsors, including all these companies, and we also have close collaboration with EAGE, SCG, and we also would like to, on top of saying once again thank you to the EAGE local chapter in Germany, we would like to invite you to the next our next event. We will broadcast this movie, No Showing, after the premiere, and we will have a panel of technical experts who will talk about to discuss yeah, there will be the technical aspects of it. So thank you so much, Hannes, again, and looking forward to the talk.
Yeah, thank you, Yanni. Very nice introduction. So, yeah, we're looking forward to the presentation then. So I will hand over the floor to Wiebke to introduce the speaker.
Yes, thank you, Hannes. So we are very delighted now to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Aria Abubakar. Aria has been working for Schlumberger since 2003, and until 2010, he was scientific advisor and the manager of the Multiphysics Modeling and Inversion Program at the Doll Research Center in Richfield. Currently, Aria is the head of data science and advisor for digital solutions, also for Schlumberger, and he's located in Houston. Aria has a master's degree in electrical engineering and a PhD in computational science, both obtained at the Delft University of Technology in the Netherlands. And as you can see, he has a very impressive publication record. He has 40 US patent applications, 5 book and book chapter publications, more than 100 scientific articles and journals, 200 conference proceedings, and 60 abstracts. So really, indeed, a very impressive record. And you may know Aria also from his lectures. In 2014, he was SEG North America Honorary Lecturer with the topic Joint Inversion of Multiphysics Data for Petrophysical and Engineering Properties. And last year, in 2020, he was SEG APG Distinguished Lecturer, talking about potential and challenges of applying artificial intelligence and machine learning methods for geoscience. So Aria is very well known for his research in the area of artificial intelligence for geoscience. And we are very happy that he agreed to speak today to us about automating subsurface model building using deep learning. As you see, we are recording Aria's presentation, so we kindly ask you to remain muted during this presentation. And as Hannes had mentioned, there will be a Q&A session afterwards, and you can, of course, already at any time write your questions and comments into the chat box, and we will then address them afterwards. And with this, I'd like to hand over to Aria. The floor is yours.
Let me try to share my screen, see whether it's still working. Okay, share screen number 2. Share. Yeah.
Works fine. Great.
Works fine. Yeah. Okay. Good. Let me set up here a bit. Reset the timer. Okay. Yeah, okay, good. I hope you can hear me well, Wiebke.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm assuming yes then, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. First of all, before I begin, I would like to thank the EAGE Local Chapter for hosting me in this webinar, as well as the Czech Republic EAGE Local Chapter, as well as the Oslo OSEG chapter for co-hosting this webinar. Also, my special thanks to Wiebke for arranging all this detail and accommodating me. And the last is for all of you to join in this webinar. I know that it is evening. Thus, I hope that I can give a presentation that interesting enough. However, it's not so heavy because it is at the end of the day. Yeah. Before I begin, I would like to thank here. This is the team that has been helping me to put this presentation together, and most of the work, actually, all of the work have been done by them. I have here Hai Bindi, which is also joined actually in this call. I have Anissa Cole, Sanli, Zunli, Vanessa, and Tao Zhao. They are all from the Digital Subsurface Intelligence team in Schlumberger. What I'm planning to present today is a workflow to automate the subsurface model building by using deep learning. Okay, let me go to the next slide and show the the outline of this presentation. By the way, I understand that you can submit the presentation in the chat. However, if you have a clarification question, you can always unmute yourself and then stop me. I think if it is just a clarification, it is better that I answer it immediately. Yeah. Thus, I'm going to start with describing about the subsurface model building workflow. Probably all of you are an expert on this one. However, I will point it out where the machine learning, especially the deep learning, can help out to improve the efficiency and then to make some of this mundane work more automated. I'm going to use one field case study to illustrate this workflow. The workflow has a various component, because I'm going to show what we have done around the log prediction, the salt detection, the fault detection, the relative geological time generation, model generation. Then after that, by combining all these derived data from seismic and the log, then we can integrate this information, and at the end we can derive the rock property of the target of the domain of interest. Right? And then I will provide my conclusion. This slide shows the glance of the final result that I will show it to you throughout the presentation, right? Because I will, in here you can see that I have actually a seismic cube of the Groningen field, and then by using the deep learning in here, we derive the relative geological time in here, illustrate in this part. Because it is like a low frequency model. And then from the relative, the RGT model, you can extract some of the horizon. Yeah. And here you can see also that the salt are detected, as well as the fault map are detected. Right. And this section show actually the rock, in here is not the rock property, actually I'm showing the sonic property that has been derived by using machine learning, using the deep learning. Okay, this is a glance of all the results that I'm going to show throughout this presentation. Now let's see the workflow. First, the input data. There are two sources of the input data that's central in this workflow. It is a seismic data, obviously, and the logs. And as we all know, when we have the seismic gather, then we will have to do a lot of the processing and interpretation so that we can arrive to the post-text seismic images that we are going to use in the next workflow. Most of this processing, or what we call like velocity model building, to see it's very time consuming, and sometimes it also requires a lot of manual interaction from the user to make it work. Right. So, and then we have been using also machine learning in order to augment, to make it more efficient, to make it more automated. For example, when you dealing with the area where you have a salt, I can pick the top of salt and bottom of salt by using machine learning, and then reduce the turnaround time of the whole velocity model building. The same thing with the logs. When after I we collected the logs, we need to QC the log. We need to identify the outlier, remove them, and correct them. And then, since we are dealing like field-wide study in here, I may have hundreds of wells or even thousands of wells. If I do the interpretation of the log one well at a time, this will take a lot of time. Even with an army of petrophysicists. Thus, we can use the deep learning in here to improve the overall interpretation time there. Yes. Now, depending on the use case, obviously there will be a non-seismic data such as electromagnetic gravity that if it is relevant, we can use it. Yeah. Now, the first step that we always do in here, from the seismic, I can derive some of the seismic attribute. I can use some of the standard seismic attribute deterministic approach to derive this attribute. However, I can use also the machine learning based workflow to derive like fault, salt, stratigraphy, as well as the relative geological time. Then, as I mentioned before, after we prepare the seismic data, the log data, and have all this derived data, I can integrate this data, right, by using another deep learning engine so that I can predict the 3D property of that area. Thus, if in the log I have the density, I have the P wave, I have the porosity, or any other rock property, I can always propagate this information from the well into the whole 3D property by using this deep learning approach. Because essentially what you do, it means that you input data at the seismic and your label will be the logs, right? If you have the non-seismic data, you can also throw that in order to make the process more robust. Because after I get the 3D property, what we have to do, we need to validate the result. One way to validate the result is to generate a synthetic data. Yeah, I can use the physics-based simulator. However, in this case, I will generate the gather, and then I probably have to run again the migration to get the post-stack images. Yeah, that can be time-consuming. There is a way how to generate the post-stack seismic images directly using a machine learning where you use it in the backward way. I'll discuss it a little bit later on. However, in the sense in here, I want to generate a synthetic data so that I can validate the result that I have. If I'm not satisfied, I can do another iteration. For example, by saying that if the result is not good, maybe we need more label. If there are more wells in the area, in that area that available, can we use them? Or we can do employ some active learning paradigm or reinforcement learning. You can also go back to the early stages to do the iteration. Because after we satisfy with this iteration, then we can output the result and go to the next workflow. Now, just to summarize in here, I will use various machine learning paradigm or training strategy, as well as the deep learning algorithm. This slide is summarizing the different algorithm that are available. Now, the first type of algorithm, you have the one that belong to the unsupervised learning. It means in here you do not need the label, and the objective is to learn the structure in the data so that you can extract the information. An example of such algorithm are autoencoder, clustering, and self-organizing map. On the other end, you have the supervised learning where you definitely need the label. There are the example of this algorithm are RNN, CNN. You have also artificial neural network, the traditional one, which is a shallow neural network, SVM, as well as random forest. The top one, like the autoencoder, RNN, and CNN, they belong also to the deep learning because we have the capability there to handle more complex problem. Yeah. Right? By using this approach, since the algorithm is flexible, you can add more layer or neuron. It means that you can capture more complex problem. However, the price that you have to pay, since you make your network more complex, it means you have more unknown, you need more data and label. The one in the middle is the semi-supervised learning, because usually we want to combine these two in cases where you do not have sufficient amount of label. The one that's very popular is obviously the generative adversarial network. This is a very powerful way if you want to generate an additional data from the true data distribution of the original training set. It has been quite successful there. You have also the variational autoencoder that we are using in one of our approach. The other paradigm is the transfer and active learning. Usually active learning means that I'm adding some additional label during my training when it is needed. Right? And then you have also the reinforcement learning. This is another machine learning framework where you try to maximize the reward by trial and error. Okay, those are just some definitions so that we are on the same page. Now, let me show you the data set that I'm going to use in here. This is a public data set. Groningen field is in the Netherlands. I'm showing here both the seismic data as well as the well location. The area that covered by the seismic data is about 54.5 kilometers by 49 kilometers. There are 1,961 inline, 2,181 crossline, and the depth is about 4 kilometers. Because the seismic data has been converted to the depth domain. And the vertical resolution is about 8 meters. Now, in this area, we have about 375 wells. All the well has gamma ray logs. Most of the well has density. Less than half of them has sonic. And there are well where the porosity log has been derived. There is 288 well, however, only on the reservoir section there. Now you can see in here, this is the seismic data again. There are some interesting structure in here. You have the salt, obviously, and you have a lot of the fault under the salt, under the subsalt. And there is definitely the reservoir layer that is which is the main point of interest in here. Yeah. Now, if I look at from the top, I can see more or less the position of all the well that are available. Most of the well are nearly a vertical well. If there is some deviation, is only 10 or 20, less than 10 degrees, less than 15 degrees. This we can consider it as a vertical well. Most of the wells are located in cluster. It means that there are few wells in the same area. But there are also some isolated wells, such as this one, and that one. There is some of them that isolated that I'm going to use it as the testing well. You can see in here the gamma ray log distribution of the 375 well, the density log, and the sonic. Obviously, you notice immediately that there are some outliers there, and obvious, especially in density, and even on the sonic. And we have not, the data have not been cleaned up. This is one of the challenges that we have to deal with. Now, with that, I'm going to go through some of the components now. Right. Now, first, I will start with the log prediction. As I mentioned before, the logs is okay. However, we need to do some preparation to make it more cleaner and to address some of these outlier part. Right? And the fact also that not all the well has a complete set of logs. Right? This, in order to make the approach more robust, we would like to make to have a complete set of log in all the well. Now, for this, we are going to predict. We are going to detect the outlier and remove it, and predict the missing log interval. Now, if some of the well do not have a certain logs, for example, it missing the density log, or it missing the sonic log, we want to generate them if it is possible. In this approach, we are using an unsupervised learning approach based on the autoencoder. And the objective is to extract and extrapolate the log by using a multi-well approach. We experimented with a couple of algorithms such as the autoencoder, CNN, and transformer. However, the result that I'm going to show you were generated using an autoencoder approach. Now, we separate like about 22 well as the testing well. All right, all the testing well is show it in here. And I'm going to show to you the result of the 4 well, which is this SWO1, which is an isolated well. There is no other well nearby this well. However, it is surrounded by other well, by quite a number of wells. The other one is the TBR4, which is also isolated. However, it's not surrounded by other wells. These AMR1 and SCB1 are located in cluster. Thus, we will expect that the result of the AMR1 and SCB1 are better than SWO1 and the TBR4. Yeah. First, I'm going to here predict the missing sonic log, right? And the input to the network are the gamma ray and the density log. Right? Now you can see in here this is the AMR1 well, SCB1, SWO1, and the TBR4. And the first track is the gamma ray. The second track in here is the density. And the third track is the sonic data. So I plot in here the measure sonic data as well as the deep learning predicted sonic data, which is in blue. However, if you look at closely also, there is a lower and upper bound of the prediction, and it is shaded also by the yellow color there in this area. Because in principle, if you can see in here, for the well AMR and SCB, the results are quite good and the uncertainty is quite low, right? Yeah, we are, by the way, we are generating this uncertainty by using the Monte Carlo dropout approach. Even on the SWO well, and TBR4 is quite good there, right? And the mean absolute error is listed in this table. Right? This is the testing well. Now, obviously I can also predict the sonic log on the training well, and I will hope that the results are much better. This is just some quality control, which is correct, right? Because the mean absolute error of this training well are significantly lower than the one that we have in the testing well. And as I mentioned to you before, also we are expecting the accuracy in SWO and TBR well are worse than the other because they are isolated well. Now, that's the sonic. And then there are also some well that missing density. We are reconstructing them also. In here, again, this gamma ray, the density, and the sonic. And in this case, the input are gamma ray and sonic, and we are reconstructing the density. There are some discrepancy in here, but it's also indicated by a higher uncertainty region. In some area in this well on the bottom, the discrepancy is quite significant. However, then if you look at the caliper log, is not okay. There is some disturbance in the caliper log. These indicate probably that there is some washout region in the density, and likely the measured density are the one that are not correct. The testing well and the mean absolute error is indicating here. And if you look at the training well, then you can see that, yeah, the error are slightly lower. Now, here, yeah, Vanessa plot also the cross plot in here on the testing well and see plot the cross plot between the density and the sonic there. And I think if you are a petrophysicist, you can identify some of these cluster, like the shale formation below the reservoir or the salt layer, as well as anhydrite. And this is the next plot show the cross plot with the predicted density, and the other one cross plot with the predicted sonic. Okay. Now, after we prepare the logs, we want to also detect now the fault and the salt. Obviously, we can always do it manually, however, it will take some time. That's why we employ the machine learning in here. The approach that we are doing in here is not using a global model of deep learning. However, we are using what we call the local model. It means that we will train and predict on the same target tube. However, obviously, when we are training, we want to use a very small amount of a label, right? So that we gain some value there. In order to make the approach robust, we are employing, in this case, a supervised learning approach. However, it is a multi-step convolutional neural network. There are two CNN models in here. The first model is where we train by using the cross-line and inline, a few of them. And then after we get the ML model, by doing that, then we can predict in the all inline direction and as well as all the cross-line direction. And then we can merge this result. Right? After you merge this result, you may get this kind of approach, this kind of result, which is you can get more fault, however, it's also noisier. And then we have a universal convolutional neural network model where we train along the depth direction with the objective to enhance the continuity and as well as the remove the noisy fault, detected fault. More information about this approach can be found in this article, which we published last year in 2020 in Leading Edge. Now let's see some result in here. Here is the fault label that we use. For this data set, we use only 5 inline and 4 crossline, and then we will predict to more than 1900 inline and 2100 crossline. Again, the focus is the subsalt area, and here is the overall the machine learning prediction, the 3D view of the subsalt. So I will let you stare on it for a few seconds. Obviously, you can see in here there are both inline and the fault are not exactly aligned in the inline and crossline. Yeah. However, this 2D, the pseudo 2D approach still can capture most of this complexity. Now, let's look at one of the vertical slides in here. This is the training line prediction of the vertical, one of the vertical slides, right? The training line. Obviously, we have training label in here. The training label look like this. If I go back and then go forward, back and forward, actually, for the training, we match, we should match the training label very well. Yeah, there are some discrepancy in this area. And then this one is the crossline prediction, like 214 step from a training line. Yeah. You can see in here we capture most of the fault, especially under the subsalt. Okay. Now, Next one is the salt body, which appear all over the place in this data set. Because it is important that we have the salt body there. Okay. Again, for this one, we are using a supervised learning approach. However, it's not a multi-step in here. It's just only one step, right? And we are training on a few cross-line and inline. And then in each of the inline and cross-line, we need to have the salt mass label, which look like this. And then we come up with machine learning model. And then for the rest of the cube, then we run through the machine learning prediction to output the salt body there. In this case, we are using 15 cross-line and 13 inline, which is uniformly distributed throughout the volume. Right. The total amount of training label is less than 1% there, which is quite very, very small, right? 1% of that. Now, this is the overall salt body prediction. You can see that here. Okay, this is another view, right? And you know that I have the fault in the previous result. If we plot them together, and you can see this kind of view, and they correspond quite well to each other, right? In this public data set, there's actually the top of salt and bottom of salt came also with the data set. And this vertical section show the comparison between the ML predicted salt body, which is indicated in the yellow color, as well as the top of salt and base of salt manually picked that came with the data set. Thus, the agreement are quite good overall. There are some discrepancy there in this area, as well as in this some of this top. Right. This is one of the inline, another inline 40 step away. Overall, it still coincide quite well. And we have also this one. This is a little bit further away. For this section, there is no base of salt pick that came in the data. And this is another inline. Right, and obviously you can see, seems that the manual pick, there is some error there on that area. And this is another one. Okay. That's the base of salt. And the last attribute that we generate before we integrate the seismic and logs is the relative geological time model. This one is a bit tricky because we don't have any label available. Then the whole idea in here, can we learn from the changes of the geological changes in the seismic data from one 2D line to the other when it is keep propagating. This, what we do in here, we want to train using this pair. For example, you have these 2D line pair, and then in here you have the flow field of that. Because in order to generate the label, because I have here the original seismic data, and then I have a randomly generate flow field, and then I can come up with a warp seismic image. Because by having this pair, then I can do my ML training. And then you can imagine in here, if the randomly generate flow field, you can generate so many variations, because in principle, you will have a lot of label in order to do that. Because how do we generate this warp field? Or the here, because we are using this random noise, and then we apply the Gaussian filter with a warp image. This after you do your training, then I go back to the original seismic data, and then I can input for two subsequent 2D section, for example, inline 1, inline 2, inline 2, and inline 3, etc., and run it through the ML model that we have been training. Then we get the flow field. Because after we get the flow field, then we can generate the RGT model there. And here is the RGT model that we produce by using this approach. As you can see in here, it does represent some of the low frequency information of the model. It's not that the boundary are not that sharp. However, it captures all the different features in the seismic data. And then from this flow field, if you wish, you can also extract some of the horizon. This is a densely extracted horizon from the RGT model. You can also extract a few of horizon as the ISO surface from the RGT. Okay, this is horizon 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Now I arrive now at almost at the end of the presentation. This is the last topic, which we want to estimate the seismic property as well as the rock property. Now, the main input data are the seismic and the label are the logs. However, since I already generated all these attributes in the previous section, I can also use that as an additional information here. Because I can use the salt map as well as the fault map or the RGT model. For this functionality, we are using a semi-supervised approach. The main reason is the label is only the log, it's only 1D, and they are only available in a limited number of wells. Because if you compare the number of wells and number of traces in the seismic data for the whole cube, is the difference is huge, right? That's why by using a brute approach with only supervised learning, it may not work very well, and you will overfit the optimization process quite easily. That's why we are doing a semi-supervised learning. The first thing that we do a seismic feature engineering by using an autoencoder, where we extract a lot of feature there. And then when we integrate, we are using a supervised approach. However, then we use this feature to augment the lack of the label in this problem. There's some detail of this approach also available in one of our paper. It will appear this year. It's already appear in accelerated version now in the Geophysics website. Now, the previous slide is show the forward what we refer to as a forward ML model, where we go from seismic and log data to the predicted subsurface property. However, you can also swap the input and the output. Then you come up with the backward machine learning model. In this flow, you will predict or trying to predict the original seismic data, the post-tax seismic images. And then you can compare these two. In principle, I'm calculating a data fit in here. If you are if in the inversion process, this is just a data fit. Then from the data fit, you can derive some correlation. Then you will know which area which is likely to be very reliable and which one is not. Yeah. Now let's look at some result. The first result that I'm going to show is the input data at the seismic and the logs. And then I will also show the result where I use also the fault map as well as the RGT model as a constraint. The overall result look like as follow. In here I have the sonic. This section show the sonic, and this is showing the porosity, and this one's showing the density. Right. Let's look at the one by one here. First, this is the machine learning prediction for the sonic of the whole cube. Obviously, you can see still see the salt and some of the reservoir layer. The color is lighter. However, this is without constraint. We didn't use the fault and RGT as a constraint. When we use the fault and RGT as the constraint, this is what we get. If I go back here, there are some quite obvious improvement, and there are some changes in the also in the amplitude value of the sonic data. Now, by using the backward machine ML model, I gray out the low confidence zone, right? And you can see some of the area that we have a high confidence in here. Here, this is the machine learning predicts the density. This is without the constraint, and here with the constraint. When I'm adding the RGT as well as the fault. This okay, I will come back with I'll discuss it a bit later. Okay, this is again the same thing. I gray out the low confidence zone in here. Now I can also validate the result by comparing the predicted sonic density and gamma ray and porosity in some of the testing well that we didn't use in the training. Because again, we have 22 of them. However, I'm going to show only 4 of them. Right? Actually, eight of them. This is the one that cluster, right? Okay. This is the sonic again prediction, the density, the porosity, and the gamma ray. You should notice in here the porosity logs is only available in this small area. Right? There's obviously the fit in the sonic and density are much better than the fit in the gamma ray. Right? This is the result of the well that are clustered. It means there are many wells that probably use in the training close to these 2 wells. That's why the result is much better. These are the result of the 2 testing well that isolated. The result is obviously much worse comparing with the previous one. Now, I want to show also what happened if I add the salt, detected salt, and we did also some of the log QC. The previous one we didn't do corrected the log yet. And this is the result that we get. They are slightly different. Let's see it a little bit carefully in here. This is again the seismic data, and you should notice that actually beyond the reservoir there is no log data anymore. That's why the result beyond this depth probably a little bit unreliable comparing with the other. This is the result that you saw before. This is this. If I'm using seismic data only. The trend, we captured the trend well comparing with the logs. This is SWO well. It corresponds quite well here, if you carefully see it. Okay. And you saw this result also with seismic, RGT, and fault. Now, if I adding the salt and the log QC, there is some good improvement there, right? Some of this kind of bleeding out noise are disappear. Right. Okay. And then the next slides show the density prediction from the seismic, RGT, fault, and salt. You can see also the match with the logs, even in this area, right? And this is the gamma ray prediction. And the last one in here is the porosity prediction. Again, the porosity is originally is only available in the reservoir area. However, after the log QC, we extended a little bit above that area. That's why we can get a better prediction, especially here in the salt layer as well as on above it. And the data set come also with the porosity model. This is the porosity model that come from the data set. I'm not sure how do they generate that predicted and the porosity model. Obviously, the porosity model is much more high resolution that we get than what we get. Okay. Now I come to the conclusion in here. This deep learning has, we think that has an excellent potential to automate and to improve the efficiency of the geoscience and geology workflow. It will open the door for the next generation workflow to be more efficient, especially when we are dealing with the data integration as well as for the application. Certainly, the mundane and repetitive steps can be automated. However, we need to use a fit for purpose machine algorithm to be able to resolve the problem effectively. Those, depending on the availability of the label data, the dimensionality of and the size of the data, as well as the operational consideration, you may employ like unsupervised, supervised, semi-supervised, etc. Our experience tells us also the quality of the label and also the data are the key for the success. Okay, with that, I'll stop now and hand it over back to Hannes and Wiebke. Thank you, everyone, for your attention.
Yes, thank you also very much, Aria. Wiebke, do you want to say some words? Or if not, we'll just open the floor for questions. Do we have some questions already in the chat, Elias? I don't
Not
see.
that I see. Sorry.
Okay, so maybe feel free to shoot any question. Maybe you can unmute them, or maybe you can write questions. I don't know what's better. So first of all, Aria, very nice presentation, very clear, and yeah, it was very nice to see that. We have also a couple of people in the audience, I think, who know a thing or two about AI and this kind of stuff. I see also some guys that joined us from the Dutch community, so hello to them too. Also, the president of the Czech Republic chapter, Leo Eisner, he's also there. So maybe he can also say hello. Elias, maybe you can maybe unmute him because he wants maybe also to say hello from the Czech chapter. Yeah, great.
Hello, I'm happy to organize. We have few people from our chapter, and this is really a big testament because we have a national holiday tomorrow. So evening talk before national holidays must be very attractive. And thank you for excellent presentation. And this is just the greeting from Prague. We are a small chapter, about 15 people total, but we try to essentially organize some talks and on the related topics. We try to mix in the near surface and the deep seismic topics to attract both the shallow near surface community as well as the deep reservoir oil and gas and energy industry. That's all from me.
Great, thanks, Leo. Awesome. So in the meanwhile, some questions maybe for Aria. So
May I ask one question? I'm not so firm with the topic, but I can see that you had a lot to calculate. And my question would be, did you use a supercomputer to calculate all these layers and different data or did you use a normal setup, I would like to say?
Yeah, this we obviously we are using the cloud computing, right? This, we are using a GPU capability there in order to do all of these things. For seismic data, this okay, you definitely cannot do it on your laptop or your local workstation. That is impossible. However, for the wellbore data, sometimes the team also still use the like the laptop is still we still be able to do some of the work there. Right. However, definitely for the seismic, and then when we do the data integration, we need to use the GPU cloud computing.
Thank you.
Maybe I have also a question in the meanwhile. What do you think is the outlook? Because you say what you have done here will help or can be further developed in the future. Do you have an idea what will happen in the next 10 years with your technology and with AI in general?
Yeah, I think probably you see it also in our, especially in our oil and gas, right? Nowadays, there are many of these technologies start bringing value, right? Obviously, not all of them will get into the final, right? However, I think there will be some of them that can bring value to our work, especially the one that can like remove some of the mundane work. If you let's take example as the fault picking or top of salt and bottom of salt picking. Those tasks are very is done by manually by human, right? Because they usually on the salt picking. Okay, usually they. An army of interpreters to do that and take them weeks to months, right? Machine learning is very good in that one. For that kind of approach, definitely, I think that will pick up like all these picking stuff or the interpretation stuff, it will be good. The one that a little bit more tricky is the inversion, like more like the inversion kind of problem where yeah, machine learning certainly can bring value there. However, probably it has to be combined properly also with some of the physics and some of the constraint. Otherwise, the result will not be robust enough. Yeah, if you are asking me, I think it will pick up. There are many of these examples already out there. Yeah, however, not all of them will be successful.
Thank you very much. I see in the meanwhile that Malcolm Francis has a question. I can maybe just read it, or Elias, you can also unmute Malcolm. I will just read it, and then if he has a follow-up question, he can also ask this. So this is a very complicated data set. What happens when there are just a few wells?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, this one has a large number of wells. Obviously, if you have just a few wells, probably the result will be, you already know the answer, I guess the result will be less robust there, right? And then we need to get the information from some other sources in order to get to a better, to more reliable result or useful one. Yeah, I wouldn't say there will be no magic in this Malcolm. This, if I have only like 5 wells and then I have to deal with area of like 30,000 square kilometers, probably that will not be good. Right? And from the machine optimization perspective, obviously I can converge the model. I can make it the ML work, right? However, the result may not be geologically plausible.
Nice, thank you, great. Any more questions? What I also will suggest, maybe please from the board, if you have other ideas, to maybe then open the floor to the audience and maybe unmute them so we can have a little more lively discussion. We can still talk about the presentation, have open questions, and also maybe we can put Oslo on the screen so to make it a bit more interactive. What do you think, Elias? Is this a good idea?
Sounds good, but I think Aria has to stop sharing his screen first.
Oh, yeah, let me stop sharing. By the way, Jan Philip seems to have his hands up. Let me stop screen. Okay.
Oh,
yeah. Aria, thanks for noticing. Just a question for you directly. If you could make a wish for the next generation of inversion software, what would you like to see coming through?
Make a wish inversion.
Yeah, if you say the software, what would you like to see? Which not just to need to be improved? Which features are you missing so far?
Okay, that's a loaded question. Okay, need to think about that. Okay, what about you? What do you want to improve?
No, it's just asking for you because you work with it every day, and it's like, okay, sometimes you just get annoyed by software because there's something missing, and you say like, well, this would be nice to have this in the next version of machine learning software.
Yeah, this obviously, I think one of the challenge, okay, if you're asking one of the challenge with this all deep learning things is the parameter selection or the hyperparameter tuning, right? That's what I always ask or challenge the team, how we can automate all this hyperparameter tuning. Because if we run off this workflow and then for each of this workflow, we need the data scientists to drive it behind it, right? Because we have also a limited number of data scientists. And that will be an issue. I guess in order for us to go to scale up significantly in the oil and gas industry, we have to deal with how we can automate this process. Right. One approach to automate this process, you can do a grid search. It means currently it's already very expensive. And Elias was asking, right? Because I need cloud computing to run one. If I do a grid search for each problem, I have to run 100. In order to get those are one of the things. If you're asking me, that's one of the challenge. How we can automate all this process, right?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. So let's bring everyone in and just have a casual discussion, and would be nice, I think. Yeah, you have a beer already. I see it. Nice. Okay, that's the spirit.
Sorry, we have a question here.
Yes, I hear you well. Yeah, please. Awesome.
Yeah, we have a question here. 1 second.
Okay, my name is Peter Osset with geoscience. Thanks for a very, very interesting presentation. A question maybe a little bit related to the previous one about whether you have a few well data, and in this case you have many wells. But even in this case, having maybe 140 wells, there are still needle sticks into the seismic. So I would assume there are still huge areas in the seismic cube that have lithologies and geology that have not really been represented in the wells where we are doing the labeling. So how do you? I was not sure, how do you really extrapolate beyond the sort of sample space covered by the wells? Do you augment your training data away from your observed well locations, or are there? How do you account for non-stationarity in these? Do you do some spatial dependency? You were talking about some feature constraints, but I wasn't really getting what you did there. If you could elaborate on this and how. Because to me, it still seems like it's completely data-driven, or do you put some models to kind of guide your training data or augment your training data? Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, the approach that we do is completely data-driven, right? We don't put any physical model there. Obviously, the structural constraint that we have are only the salt as well as the fault. Okay, the RGT model give you also some structural constraint. That's why you can see the uplift that we get as soon as we get the salt region right. You can see the improvement that we get on the top, on the bottom, right? And okay, you are correct, right? Even in this area, I have like a 50 kilometer by 50 kilometer. However, I have only 300 375 well. It's still very sparse, right? This ML, deep learning, machine learning, essentially is very good to do this interpolation. You can see the result in the area where we have area surrounded by the well is relatively much better than the area where is not surrounded by the well. Yeah. Obviously, okay. If there is some feature in the subsurface that are not represented in the well, there is no way that machine learning or deep learning can resolve it. The sense is all the possible subsurface feature has to be available in the well. If it is not there, then you cannot get it. That is the disadvantage of the data-driven approach that maybe can be augmented by the model-driven or the physics-driven approach.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have a question, or is it?
Yes, we have another question here.
Okay, thank you for a very nice presentation. Probably in line with Ter's question. In your workflow, you talk about iteration when you are not satisfied with results, right? If it's not good enough, then you do another iteration and go.
Yeah.
How do you define a good result? Because in case you are going to predict density or other parameters for an unknown area.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just let me try to answer it. Okay. When we do that semi-supervised learning, when we do prediction, we calculate what if it in the inversion you call it a localized uncertainty, right? By using in principle, ideally you want to use a Bayesian approach. However, that is very expensive because we are using a trick called the Monte Carlo dropout. This dropout technique is a technique where you do the training and then you mute some of the node there so that you can get some kind of distribution of your make it okay. In the training, it is some kind of regularization. Right. However, if we turn on that one also in the prediction, then you can get instead of get one predicted model, I can get 20 or 30, and then I can average them. Then I can calculate the uncertainty where some of the area. Thus, I can get some kind of uncertainty prediction. Right? In addition to that, what ML is produced is the probability. The probability is not one number. Because if you you can also always keep the high probability result, and then you keep them, and then use them as the label if you want to do the next iteration, right? Because as a label, in principle, in our approach, we do not need really data along a well. It is a point cloud. Because I can take any point and I can say that is my label. Because there is a way to say that in certain area which prediction is good or relatively good, and then we can take that as the next of iteration of the training. This is what they call it the bootstrapping. It may not be, it can help, however you have to be careful, because if you keep doing it too many times, then you will bias your answer to that. And you may be biasing to the wrong one. Another way to do it is to get an additional input from the user or from the expert during the training. After I do one training, maybe I can have the expert to look at the result, to QC the result, and check maybe my fault map or salt map, tweak something there, and then I can do another retraining there.
Okay, thank you. Then expert evaluation we come into. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think this is it from our side. Thank you so much for the very interesting presentation, everyone.
Thank you.
So thanks again to Oslo and the Czech Republic for joining us. So I would say let's open the mics and have let's say a couple of minutes just to have a bit more casual conversation, and then let's end our event. So Elias, did you allow everyone to unmute themselves?
Yeah, I did. Everyone should be able to unmute him or herself. At least I think I did. Oh, well, no, I think I did.
You muted all, but then I think you unmuted all, I think, because I could unmute myself again.
Okay, now I think I asked everyone to stop being muted.
Yeah.
Yeah, he just mute everyone.
Sorry.
Actually, I have a question here. How was EAGE? I didn't get to attend it a few weeks ago. Was it well attended in person? Any of you attended EAGE meeting, annual meeting in Amsterdam?
I'm afraid none of us was able to actually join. I don't know if anyone from the audience, but from our chapter, well, actually one was, and he's not here today because he's running a company, the Delft version, Peter, and he has been presenting and has been there with his booth, but we had not the chance to catch up yet.
Yeah. Because SEG is also a month ago, right? The in-person is very empty there. Okay, this I was there in Denver. It's usually in the room that with 200, 300 people, there is only like maybe 20 or 30 people. Okay.
I'm really from NGI or didn't present it. I heard there EAGE, Yunsang, and probably more. I just read something, a summary for our NGI's website. I think there are around 3,000 people attendees, 1,400 in person, 1,600 online.
I see.
That's still 17 parallel sessions. So there are not many people in each session.
Okay.
So many rooms. But the main thing I learned, you may have other opinion, but there are 3 or 4 panel discussions in every day in the middle of the day. And the first day was energy challenges and what's going to be after oil and gas and replacement. The answer was hydrogen, wind, geothermal, solar. With hydrogen, with CO2 storage and CCS. The next day was about the technologies ahead and so on, and the answer was wind, solar, geothermal, and also CCS. And the last day was about the education, that students are not anymore interested in oil and gas. If this name at university, the number are going down and down. And future geophysicists and geologists what's the field they're working with. Again, was subsurface characterization, geophysics is very important, and so on. And CO2 storage and hydrogen on the ground is the solution. I think that was something that we had every day. But yeah, that was the message I got, that oil industry is taking quite serious that part, energy transition, and there are some solutions for that. I don't know if you have
maybe I have
yeah.
one more comment. Yeah, I think that summed it up quite well. One additional observation I made is also what we see now is much less focus on frontier exploration, especially on the Norwegian shelf. I think that applies all over. Oil companies are not kind of underinvested over the last few years, and now it's kind of finding the easy barrels just near the existing fields. So there were some interesting talks, for example, one from Equinor showing the use of 4D data for exploration. So they actually had 4D data almost by accident covering the troll field, but then it was capturing areas off the cliffs outside troll, and they started to see interesting changes. And they managed to convince the explorationist team to have a look at that, and then they drilled it, and then it was a big oil discovery. And I think that's also interesting now that the companies are maybe focusing much more on near field exploration in combination, and you're seeing also companies are merging production teams with exploration teams because they see they need to work together more. Whether this is kind of now because of the transition or because of the lower investments and the high price of oil and gas, that is really the time is of essence. Getting most gas and oil out in a short time is kind of the focus than sort of the long-term investments. And it's probably related. It's both the transition we're into, but also the current energy crunch and elevated prices is setting actually a direct impact of what we see at these conferences. If there was something I was a bit disappointed with, it was maybe, well, it was a little bit diluted. Of course, coming out of the almost 1.5 years in Corona isolation, it's almost good not to meet too many people in the first time. So in that sense, I think people were happy that this is also kind of a gradual step up to maybe the meeting in Madrid next year. There will be probably more people. But then there was, my impression, it was 80% contractors. Operators and oil companies were much less present. Total Energy was very offensive and had a big booth and a lot of people. I guess they are doing anti-cyclic behavior there, or if it's just they are into a period of rebranding. But they did show some really nice stuff. Other companies, like for example Shell, who's, you know, this was in their backyard. I met one person I know from Shell, and that's it. And also academia. I didn't meet too many people from academia. Maybe there were more online attendees from academia. But, yeah, so it was interesting transition, but also a little bit kind of it's interesting changes, but also a little bit almost like feeling a little bit sad that our industry and business and our fields that we are kind of, I mean, we're proud of what we do, but we see that it's kind of, yeah, it's mixed feelings, I would say.
Yeah. However, see, even okay, if you are talking about CCUS wind farm, it's about characterization, right? Because the geoscience will still be there, right? It's still the key role, right?
Yeah, that's a very important point. That our sort of the skills in geoscience, whether it's geophysics or geology, physics, will still be very important. Whether it's CCS, geothermal, geohazard, monitoring of, and yeah, so it's and that's why it's a little bit. I also have a position at NTNU, and I see this as a challenge with getting students attracted to you know, we're losing students, but we still need the next generation both to handle the important transition, but also to be able to face the future where we also need the same competence. You cannot just leave, you know, so we have some challenges here.
Yeah. Yeah, but especially to attract the student is difficult nowadays. Most of the students now, they try to avoid probably the things that smell oil and gas. Okay. Okay. Hannes, I'm sorry, this I bring up a different topic. Hope that's okay. You say it's casual, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So let's see. Oh, my light is switched off. I have to move sometimes my, anyway, otherwise the light switches off. Is there any more question or somebody wants to say something? Otherwise you can also, Jan, you stand there, you want to say something? No. Yeah, so otherwise we can also call it a day. I think it's 7:20. It was a very nice, successful event. Nice questions, nice discussions, and also it worked really well with the collaborative effort with the 3 local chapters. That was really nice. So yeah, so I would say thank you all very much, and hope to see you all in the next event again.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.